Good afternoon, everyone. John Anderson here with my career informative speech. The specific purpose of this speech is to demonstrate how counselors with a focus on first responders can improve the conversation around mental health and what steps can be taken to develop resiliency programs. Think about a time in your life that you've experienced or witnessed some type of emergency. Focus on the sense of relief that comes when professional responders arrive on scene to help. Then take a moment to consider how the situation would be different if these folks were not there when they were needed the most. A Harvard Review of Psychology article cites a study by Nina Lewis Schroeder and others that says first responders on average develop PTSD and depression at rates more than double the general public. 32% of responders will develop mental health issues as opposed to the average of 12% of adults. Unless someone is directly involved in an emergency situation, they probably don't really think about the first responders or the job they do. What about the people that run into the emergency? When tragedy is finished, are they expected to jump back on the truck and continue on with their day? Jennifer Phillips quotes Drew Propniak in Counseling Today as saying, "Our worst day is first responders every day. Their days are filled with accidents, pain, grief, loss, and trauma." Many first responders suffer in lonely silence a pain that they bury deep inside. What can be done to help those that help others when needed? Steps should be taken to change the conversation around responder mental health, including the mentality around receiving help, understanding and integration of the first responder community, and working with agency administration to develop safe and healthy programs that encourage resiliency. This is the job of a trauma crisis counselor and a reason why they should be focused on first responders specifically. First responders face many mental health struggles that are prevalent in their field, yet they seem to be more resistant to seeking help from professionals than others. In an article for Kaiser Permanente, Holly Kennedy Hansen explains that the responders' work involves long hours spent at a job that puts them in the worst moments of another's life, often costing their normal schedule and time with family. They prioritize the task at hand. This comes over personal health, safety, sleep, nutrition, and their own mental health. She goes on to explain that symptomatic mental health conditions affect 85% of first responders, with PTSD and depression being 5 times more likely than in other Americans. Jennifer Phillips adds that 37% of responders have thought about suicide, making them 10 times more likely to contemplate suicide than other Americans. The Harvard study cites that responders are resistant to conversation around mental health because they often think it could cause them to appear weak or not fit for duty, that they understand that mental health is important, but fear that admitting that they need help will halt or undo any forward progress in their career. Phillips adds that responders feel that they shouldn't need help because they already knew what they signed up for when they started their career. Because of this, first responders see their struggles as unique. Their community is tight-knit and not very trusting of outsiders, especially with feelings that could be interpreted as vulnerability. Counselors must find a way to integrate themselves into this community of responders in order to build trust. Responders often mistrust mental health professionals based on their previous interactions, or just solely on the fact that counselors do not understand their specific situations. Phillips goes on to say that a counselor should avoid shallow connections, such as questions like, "What is the worst thing you've ever seen?" or any attempt to validate what the responder is feeling. They should also understand that responders often use a dark, almost morbid sense of humor and stories to release what they are holding inside. Counselors need to be able to meet responders where they are. This sometimes comes at the cost of canceled schedules, canceled appointments, rescheduling appointments at a moment's notice. They also need to be flexible with session scheduling and know that responders may need mental health care at all hours after a tragic event. The way to build trust with these responders is for a counselor to take every opportunity they can to integrate themselves with the responders, whether this is union meetings, ride-alongs on the ambulance or fire truck, and downtimes at the station. After finding ways to integrate with and earn the trust of responders, a counselor must protect that investment while also using that information to incorporate programs that not only treat the responder, but will also work with administration to encourage preventative care. Counselors need to develop a treatment protocol for those already struggling. The Harvard study points out 2 specific courses of action and why treatments need to concentrate on methods that have proven to specifically help first responders. First of, McLean Hospital has incorporated a phase-oriented treatment process that takes steps, gradually increasing the level of care to provide the optimal outcome. It has also been found that eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EDMR, has shown significant promise with PTSD in first responders. Counselors need to not only use these specific techniques and learn more about them, they also need to find ways to prevent the need for increased mental health care and build resiliency. They can work with agency administrations to destigmatize the request for help. Kaiser Permanente's article states that 70% of responders admit that they would be more likely to seek care if approached properly from somebody in a leadership position. Increasingly, it is found that 80% would consider seeking help if a colleague verbalized concern to them in a confident manner. Counselors can work with employers to add resiliency training, to educate on the warning signs of burnout and PTSD, to establish peer support programs, and to set up periodic mental health check-ins. In conclusion, counselors may be used to working with mental trauma, but must understand that first responders have their own culture that experiences, processes, and copes with trauma and grief in a unique way. Care needs to be taken to understand the specific needs of responders and allow them the freedom to process in a way that works for them personally. Remember, it can take a long time for a counselor to build trust, but it can be damaged with a single interaction. Thank you.